Who is my neighbor? Who is my fellow man? Who is my brother? And am I his kin?
Welcome back to the Poets Corner. I am Micah Joel Tui, and I am joined by Jessamine Luong. Hello!
Hi.
And we're done having a conversation about how, in a certain perspective, truth is beauty and beauty truth. And Jessamine said that you were more likely to believe that today than you were, at some time ago. As someone who loves von Balthasar, who believes that the credibility of truth is beauty, there's a certain discovery that comes along. And one of the reasons why I love Theodora Bach's poetry is, she didn't really heavily get into writing poetry until her 60s. And so, she really, so there's this huge amount of experience. She's being a writer of the greatest generation and all. Anyway, I'd like to start in this conversation about truth and beauty and experience with a poem she wrote called Generations. Before I knew that I would age, I thought it meant the 86 revolutions Grandma had finished when she slipped quietly to the back stoop from the oak center table set for 16, serving 3 generations the usual Sunday after church dinner, just to catch her breath, and then rested quietly in the upstairs oak bed, having instructed Mama to unpack the white shroud she had carefully made and placed it in the bottom of her immigrant Norwegian trunk. Today, a Northwestern graduate who had grown up while I wasn't looking grabbed me with his always too long arms in the middle of 6 p.m. Kroger madness and hugged me, grinning the same infectious beam he had way back then, when he was learning to interpret Shakespeare and Dylan Thomas and Sandburg and Frost and so forth. Tomorrow, in room 209, I'll teach Dandelion Wine again to unsuspecting sophomores who think that age is something that happens only to Mrs. Bentley or Colonel Freeley, her great-grandmas, who are gently moved down the shore and haven't been hugged in front of the Kroger dairy counter by spontaneous loving arms, still loyal to memories shared with an old teacher who does know. We talk about, Luigi Giussani, who we both read, has a famous expression. He says, the journey to truth is an experience. And it seems to me that as we grow, we begin with either our illusionments or our disillusionments, I guess, depending on where we come from. And hopefully as we get older, as we age, whether we start cynical or idealistic, reality begins to set in and tempers us either way. And so, looking at that, and I guess this is a very personal question, and I hate to spring it on you, but what experience as now no longer a college student, now a college teacher, beginning that, we'll call it the road to Dandelion Wine. now that you're so I'd just like to leave it to you and talk about what's going on, what's making the difference in seeing the dandelion as a flower rather than a weed.
I don't know, I think part of it is mortality, I'm getting to a certain age. I'm not that old. Actually, according to Thomas Aquinas, I'm the ideal age, I think.
Oh, you're 33?
I'm 33, yeah.
Okay.
So maybe I'm heading down, maybe I'm starting to go down the hill. But yeah, I think mortality, being aware of mortality when you're young. I think we talked earlier about grasping. You're always grasping, and in a sense I'm still grasping, but at the same time I'm also aware that everything in grasp is, it's not permanent, it's transient, you know, and so part of it is a search for permanence, for what is permanent, and you know, what's permanent in every moment, and what's beautiful in every moment. And I guess for me, beauty is kind of permanent. It's I don't know, I'm not being very articulate, but I think mortality, I mean, this maybe it's kind of a cliche, but mortality makes me want to enjoy the moment, you know, makes me more mindful of the moment, and realizing that I'll think about this a lot in the car. I get in the car, I've got two people in front of me, and people behind me. I've got this tiny car. I think, what if I die, you know, right now? I think that every day when I'm driving. What if I die today in a car accident? And I think just that kind of thinking makes me feel like I have to see what's beautiful in the moment, and really reflect on that.
This feeling of needed security is brought to you by big boat gas guzzling American sports utility vehicles. Ride in them, because even though you may be less safe, you'll feel a lot more safe driving the 21st century equivalent of a Sherman tank.
Exactly. It's funny too, because that whole scene I described is not a beautiful scene. It's an ugly scene. I guess it's the need to find something beautiful even in the ugliness that we live in.
When you were talking about trying to find the permanence, what do you mean by that? I think I understand what you mean by that, but
yeah, I was saying, I found myself saying that, and then just a difficult time articulating it. What's permanent? What's real? What's, like, you know, the me and the you, right? We shed ourselves every 7 years or something, and we're completely different material stuff, right? But what is it that stays the same? It's the consciousness. It stays the same. I still have the memory of the me that I was 7 years ago, and I guess that's what it is. It's an exercise in consciousness. You know, every moment, what I choose to be conscious of becomes permanent. It becomes a permanent part of me, and then from there, what I do becomes a permanent part of the world. Not permanent in that it remains itself, but it affects something, which affects something, which affects something, and you know, and that's where I kind of disagree with I don't know. I guess I think that there is permanence, or maybe permanence isn't the right word, but continuity, I guess.
I think it's always been interesting, having gone from place to place at different times in my life. There's always a new desire when you're going to a different place where you don't have any established history to start a new continuity, you know, to try to reinvent yourself or transform yourself or purge yourself of various faults. I think about that, and I realize that even though you may change your place, the you still goes with you.
Right.
And, you know, sometimes when, you know, a lot of my Eastern-leaning friends, they like to say, well, there is no self, there is no permanence. But I think that poetry maybe gives us a taste of something that is permanent. Because when we hear the words of Wordsworth, when he says the sad music of humanity and the transience of all earthly things, if something is permanent and timeless, even if it's only change, and the fact that we experience that turning, and the fact that I would like to think that those words from Wordsworth will remain forever, because it will continue in the continuity of our lives and the continuity of humanity's experience remains relevant to the moment. Considering what we're talking about, I guess this would be a good time in the program to share one of my new poems. I try to share one of my poems, at least one poem on every show. And this is a poem I wrote for my brother David's birthday, whom you have met. Very, very handsome and charming young man. Sorry, ladies, he's single. He's going to be an employed engineer soon, making more than $50,000 starting the year. He's extremely fit, extremely handsome, very chivalrous, very polite, very affectionate, loving, and is actually authentic. He's not just faking it being an asshole. So, Mr. Perfect is already taken. So I felt the need to just pour salt in the wound this evening. Anyway, that was just me complimenting.
But you're not taken, are you? Sorry. had to point that out.
Here on the Poets Corner, no subject is taboo except my personal life.
Okay.
So, which is a joke because people will ask and I'll tell them anyway. But this poem, he just turned 22 at the end of March, and this poem appropriately is entitled 22. Dying is easy at 18, and living is harder at 40. 22 is its own time, the new 18 for we late bloomers, the new 30 for those weary of life. The verge of manhood, they say, am I, the verge like a continental plate. The earthquakes rage along my faults, as trial and time doth try to smooth impediments to manhood in my jagged edges. A new beginning ought to come from one so living on the verge, but one such life may feel on edge, a breakthrough to some other self, who I may not know till 23. We talk about looking for permanence and trying to find a continuity when you say, every 7 years our matter is new. For there to be some continuity between 3 and 33, doesn't that also have to imply, if that's true, that there is some of the same beauty from 3 to 33? Because, sometimes people like to say life is beautiful, and I guess the contention I'd like to make, and I'd like you to respond to, is if life is beautiful at 3, and there is a continuity from 3 to 33, then there must be something beautiful about life at 33, and 44, and 55, and 77. Do you get where I'm going? What are you looking for in this writing? What have you been searching for?
What am I looking for? From 3 to 33, I guess for me in poetry, in a poem I try to capture a moment, And in a sense, I'm looking for permanence there because I'm trying to make that moment permanent, that beautiful moment to be remembered, And then in a narrative, when I think about 3 to 33, I think of the narrative. And I think we tell stories to try to make sense of things, and then that story becomes a thing, But I think that the continuity is consciousness itself. I'm conscious of me as 3, I'm conscious of me as 33, and I'm conscious of everything that happened in between. And I experienced all of those things. And so I think when I write them down, I want someone else to experience it with me, or whatever I happen to write. I want somebody else to experience that moment or to experience that narrative. And I find myself using the metaphor a lot in my mind when I think about friendship. I think about walking down a street with someone. I think of memories as streets, and people, when you walk a street together, you experience that person, you experience that person's story. And I don't know, I guess what I'm searching for when I write is to examine life and to make myself understood and to understand others. To be a witness, I guess, of what I've seen and what I've experienced, so that it's not forgotten, I guess. Maybe it goes back to mortality.
I'd like to conclude this segment, if I may. I'd like to quote parts 2 and 3 of your poem, Concept of God, because I think it gets something out of what we're going for here. Tongues of fire fall upon our solemn songs. A sacred hush fills our holy spaces. Fearful awe precedes the rush of utterances, streams of syllables quaking in the air. Dark lines around the world, and rules and laws and words, and each have meanings that you learn in Sunday school. And like a genie in a bottle, you can use his rules to bend his rules, if you are smart and wish for all the wishes in the world. This is the Poets' Corner. and we will be right back.